This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Well, as we continue our way through our series on the architecture of reality, on uh, anthropology and cosmology, what kind of world, what kind of universe this is, what the makeup of the universe is, and what is man, and where does man fit into it? We started by talking about the self and the ancient understanding of the self, because like John Calvin says at the beginning of the Institutes, that the two knowledges that we need are knowledge of self and knowledge of God, and he says it's hard to tell which comes first. It's they're too they're too intertwined to really understand what comes first. We'll be going back and forth talking about the different ones. I was going to talk about Milton this morning, but David and I just talked about Knox Unplugged and how we're going to go through Milton on Knox Unplugged. So I'm going to put that off till David and I are on the podcast together. So what I want to talk about this morning is Cicero's Dream of Scipio. Now, when you start talking about the medieval mind, the medieval understanding, or the pre-modern, pre-Enlightenment understanding, one of the things that's fascinating is uh, the they had an attitude that wanted to integrate all knowledge into a single set of knowledge. So the interrelatedness knowledge was hugely important to them, whereas we want to specialize. They wanted everything to fit together, and Cicero was a Roman philosopher, writer, statesman, uh, rhetorician, and but he, in his book De Republica, on the Republic, talking about political philosophy, he has a section where he breaks out to talk about cosmology, that was really influential in the Middle Ages on the early church, and it's and the reason is because he pulls together in this vision that he writes about, that his character Scipio has. He pulls together the what we might call the astronomy of the day. That um, we when we do astronomy, we think of it in terms of sending out the Hubble telescope and trying to get a vision of the universe from space. But they couldn't travel into space. Instead, all of their astronomy was done from their local position standing on the Earth. So classical astronomy uh, was useful, but it also was from you could do it from the place you were standing. There was no special. There was no you didn't even need a telescope, because it was about the movement of the sun, the moon, the stars. It was about half of astronomy was done in the day, because it was a lot of the how the sun moved, and the way that affected the light, as well as the being able to navigate, and all sorts of things. Well, and when we do astronomy, we throw our imagination up into space, and we picture everything from a neutral perspective or something like that. But the dream of Scipio is a it shows the way that they or the way we view ourselves and the way we view the stars are fundamentally interrelated. Um, G.K. Chesterton says that you can't remake the world without first remaking the heavens, and he's talking about how the shift from an understanding of this understanding that Scipio has, or that Cicero has, to the modern astronomy ends up remaking our vision of ourself. When we look up into the sky, we always will see a reflection of what we believe we are. And so when the world started to see the uh, the heavens as empty and dark and cold, mostly space. The heavens as a heavenly unit disappeared. Right at that same time that we lost the understanding of people as microcosms of the heavenly space, right? So you start thinking that when we stop thinking of humanity as people, right? We become matter. When you say what is man made of, you start talking instead about the biological. The biological becomes fundamental. The physical becomes fundamental. In this is what C.S. Lewis is getting at in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, when they land on the island of the retired star Ramandu, and and Eustace says, "Oh, in my world," when he's meeting the star, he says, "In my world, a a star is just a flaming ball of burning gas." And Ramandu says, "Even in your world, that's not what a star is. Only what a star is made of." But we talk about ourselves as if we are only what we are made of as well. So the shift in cosmology that happened with what was called the new astronomy at the time, it's old to us now, but it was new at the time, um, ends up affecting how we view people and humanity and society and everything as well. Um, so, you know, uh, we'll just dive into the Dream of Scipio. The Dream of Scipio is in the sixth book of On the Republic by Cicero, and it's a vision that Scipio has. He's a Roman general, and he has this vision, and he ends up explaining and talking about the immortality of the soul, kind of the cosmology, the nature of the cosmos, and then how do I fit into it? Right, that's Scipio's kind of conclusion, and here's how I fit into this kind of universe. Because Scipio, he recounts a dream he had where his grandfather comes to him. Scipio Africanus is his name. The general who defeated Hannibal comes to him and takes him on a journey through the heavens. He shows him the vastness of the universe, and as they travel up through the heavens, he shows that there's an order, a celestial order that is governed by music, or that is organized by music, and it's harmonious music that the spheres, the planets, as they travel through the heavens, they let off a sound, and it creates this cosmic symphony that we can't hear down here anymore, right? Now, we're designed to be able to hear it, but because of our focus on earthly things, we lose the ability to hear it. And he explains to Scipio that the human soul is immortal; it lives on after death, and that when we think in terms of just now, in the present, in this place, we don't find true fulfillment for ourselves, because we're not temporarily created earthly beings. We're actually created to join the gods. He's a pre-Christian writer. We're created to join the gods, and we do that by dedicating our life to virtue. And for him, it's virtue is the dedication to the common good. And for Cicero, he's talking about De Republica, that involves service to the government, or to the state. They didn't really, I mean, government was much more personal then. So it was dedication to the people leading us, and that souls who live virtuously, he says, will ascend through the stars and dwell among the gods. But when we just pursue earthly pleasures, we end up bound to the mortal world when we are immortal. Right? And so that causes us to be dislodged from our own selfhood, because we're so focused on the mortal world. Uh, and what's interesting is, you sometimes hear people say, well, they didn't understand how vast and how large the universe is, and that's why ancient people believed in divinities or believed in gods, or they believed in. But what Cicero shows us is they absolutely understood the immense vastness of the universe, because that's a big part of what Cicero, one of the points that Cicero makes. Um, but his conclusion isn't. Uh, his conclusion is, because the earth is so small, earthly fame, material pursuits are not important. We're pursuing our place in the vast universe means that you have to often turn your back on the earthly fame, because it's mortal fame. It's not immortal. So in the grand cosmic scheme, he says your earthly life ends up being really unimportant. Um, and so he says that way, or that then what our focus should be on is duty and justice and service to Rome. Now, there's a truer, greater, immortal glory in service to Rome, because the Rome, because he sort of views the entire universe as an imperial place, and Rome as a reflection of the imperial nature of the sun, moon, the stars, the universe, the way that it is. And so he wakes up and he's inspired by his vision to live a life of virtue and public service for the common good, which is really interesting. We just don't even have that um, category anymore. The common good. It's something we don't really talk about, because we don't really see our self in the broader picture, uh, the broader universe, or even our broader society. What's our place in the broader society isn't a question that how is what I'm doing affecting the common good? How is the way I'm living affecting the society? Now, Scipio's dream ends up becoming really influential. Uh, all throughout the Middle Ages, they look back at it as one of the sources of knowledge for uh, one of the sources of knowledge for understanding the universe, or a central source of knowledge, and it actually comes through uh, a later commentator who takes the dream of Scipio, and Macrobius. He takes the dream of Scipio, and he's the one who translates it, so to speak, for the medievals. Um, but that understanding that there is a greater common good, and that one of our jobs in our life is to live in such a way that we leave we leave society in a better place because we lived in it. Whether that's working as a janitor, and you look around and you see that the better I do my job, the better it is, the more able, say you're a nighttime janitor, which is a job I've had before. You come in, you take out the garbages, you vacuum the floors, you wipe down desks, and it's easy to start thinking, well, what I'm doing isn't important, and anybody could do it, or but the reality is, you doing your job makes it possible for people that work in those offices during the day to focus in and do a better at their job, and thinking of all of our life that way. How is the work I'm doing, whether it's taking care of the home, and uh, uh, making food for people, working as a janitor, as a mechanic, or working in finance, or working in entertainment, whatever it is, that your job is to make it so that other people can live their lives better. Right? That's a social understanding of virtue that assumes it's all interconnected. Even when we're choosing a career, we often think, what's the job that can get me the furthest? Right? We think in terms of uh, worldly advancement, and that's not the issue isn't that we should or shouldn't advance in the world. It's that our advancement can or doesn't need to come at the expense of others. And often, there's a I think a lot about an interview I watched with Seal, the singer Seal. He talks about how there's a lot of people that are great musicians and they're good, but they don't achieve the kind of the level of greatness that they could because they lose their generosity in their pursuit for their own greatness. And he said, when you meet and spend time with the people that are at the very top of his the very top musicians, he says every single one of them is generous. None of them uh, hold back their knowledge. They share. They're generous. They want to help people. And he says, and that is one of the aspects that puts them over the top into greatness. And because they don't think just about their own success, they're always wanting the success of everyone that they spend time with, and it's a different mentality that versus a competition for limited resources that modernity, the Enlightenment, but especially modernity, at the root of modernity, one of the assumptions is that there are limited resources and we're all in competition for them, and that competition for limited resources is what moves the world forward. And uh, but the medievals, the ancients, the the best of the ancients and the best of the medievals, they understood that we don't live in a world of limited resources, but in fact, the way to the way towards lasting glory, so to speak, is through service to society, because society is actually an integrated whole. It's fascinating to read, but it's odd that you can read something like Scipio's vision and feel convicted that I have dedicated myself in selfish ways to my own advancement, or even just only the advancement of my family, something like that. And you see churches get into competition with one another, as if there's a limited amount of uh, God's pleasure that you can get, and I have to get more, and that means that other churches are going to get less. Right? We slip into that. Excuse me. We slip into that mindset so easily because we don't see the interrelated nature of society, because we don't actually see the interrelated nature of the universe.